Welcome back into another episode of the XRP podcast. Today is going to be a hot one because we are going to go into clarity and why it is crashing the market. We'll get into all of that. It is going to be, I think, a rundown of where the market could be going in the next few months. Joining me will be Mr. Mickle coming in, of course, to discuss all of this. You guys have seen him on the show many times before. We'll have him join here in just a moment. As a reminder, make sure to like and subscribe. That's the one thing that we only ask that of you guys. Hopefully you're already part of this family, but right now there's about 32% of you who are not subscribed. I mean, we got a lot of returning viewers, but a lot of you new viewers have not jumped in to the XRP pod and the PB podcast. So do that right now. If you're listening on the audio side of this, make sure and give us a few stars because that always helps us out. I want to thank our sponsor today, and that is Uphold, where you guys can earn crypto better. A lot of things happening with Uphold staking rewards. So you can stake up to 20 different cryptocurrencies and get into the reward side of things. New tokens, early access, along with full transparency. This is one of the best platforms out there to make trades on when it comes to crypto. The other thing you guys should be doing is this right here. Get the card, the XRP rewards card, which comes in the form of an Uphold debit card. And the nice thing about this, guys, is you can do this without a credit check. Also get up to 6% back on all your purchases for the first 3 months. You can get up to 10% back with a direct deposit stacked in on this. So this is one of the best values out there when it comes to a debit card where you can get into your digital assets. Make sure and check out Uphold. Use the link down below. Let them know we sent you. Let's bring in, of course, none other than Mickle. How's it going, man?
I am good. Unlike the market.
What is that? Is that a Bitcoin beanie?
Not a Bitcoin beanie. You got to be careful with those nowadays.
You have an orange, anything orange, immediately people, especially in the crypto space, they are just defaulted to, oh, is that a Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Anyway, hey, listen, we've got a lot of news to hit on, Mickle. And of course, one of the things that we've got to talk about, I'll go over and share this, was the crypto legislation getting delayed. And the delay is one that could be a little bit tough on the market. I think we are now seeing Bitcoin under 70K for the first time in a very long time. And of course, the crypto queen herself, that of course is Cynthia Lummis, and she's talking about essentially, actually, let's listen to this.
This legislation, Lobbyists. She is the chairwoman of the subcommittee on digital assets. Senator, it's wonderful to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. First things first, can you give us an update on when you expect this legislation to happen? You lost a big window, right, after Brian Armstrong from Coinbase complained about the markup.
Well, good morning, Maria. We did lose that window, but Senator Thune, the majority leader, has assured us that even though now we're going to have to defer into the spring, that he will reserve time on the Senate schedule, which is very hard to get, for later this spring. We had scheduled a markup in the banking committee, but the day before we had to pull it off the agenda, not because just of what Coinbase had said about it, but because there was other concern. And you just mentioned one of the big ones, and that is the banks and some of the credit unions have some members of the committee concerned that they will lose deposits.
All right, so there it is. You guys know it. It's the typical rundown that we've been seeing for a long time. Save the banks. Let's save the banks because, crypto deposits are going to escape like crazy. The fact that this has been moved, Mickle, how big of an impact do you think this is?
If it's obviously an impact on timing, but one of the things that I think is very interesting is the odds of the bill passing have gone up according to Polymarket since this happened. So I'll say one thing, whether it's what people like or dislike in terms of whose side they are on the clarity bill, I think this is a universal truth here. Brian Armstrong held out and was obviously a big reason why we didn't get past in that window. And I thought it was funny that Maria led pretty strong into going at Brian there. On the other side of it, like, I hate to say it, but I would imagine Brian's leverage on this has been completely evaporated in terms of what the market has done since then. It's one of those things for me. I would imagine that there's a huge effort going into passing this bill. I don't think Coinbase can really hold it out based off of what the market is doing. So, is it going to be the perfect bill in terms of Coinbase, in terms of yield? I think what's happening in the market right now is going to probably make it so that's not the case. I've been pretty firm on the fact that I think a clarity bill just needs to be passed. Whether Coinbase can offer yield or not in that clarity bill is not my biggest concern. And now I think parties are going to be brought to the table because the market is not going to buy them a lot of time in order to get this stuff done. I think there's going to be huge pressure to get it done across the industry. I think everyone realizes this needs to happen. And I think this is just going to pull parties to the table even faster. So I think that's why the chances are actually going up. I think there's not a lot of time or not a lot of room to negotiate this thing anymore. And the market's telling people that.
Well, you're looking at the Clarity Act signed into law 2026. You can see really just back on January 20th, guys, that was just 15 days ago, okay? We were at a 40%. And to your point, Mickle, you're right. We are starting to see it go up. So the delay has definitely been an issue that I think has been a benefit to the banks, because the banks are really the stopgap here, saying they want to reserve the issue around stablecoin yield. Now, granted, does it mean we also start to impose on self-custody or into the DeFi space? That, I think, is the area that may end up being more contentious than the stablecoins. It's possible that stablecoins get thrown under the bus, to your point, and passed. What do you think when you look at this? Let me bring this up real quick because I thought this was very interesting. Let me show you this real quick. So this was a post that I put out. I'll zoom in on that for everybody. I put out yesterday, and the point is that the crypto industry, mostly I think the lobby, came in and they proposed to expand the community bank involvement in stablecoin infrastructure, basically looking at, and if you look at this right here, the statement I said, this has been where the big banks have been pointing at all of this. Now it's did the crypto guys put a little bit of a spin on this and say, well, wait a minute, we want to create a plan for the smaller banks. This, I think, is why we are seeing a delay, because I think this flipped the script on the bigger banks, and they were like, oh, SH, they want to try to do something with these smaller banks. Do you think this is any issue on why this was delayed, or do you think it was just a negotiation tactic?
I tend to think more, and based off of what we know, right? Based off of what we know, I do come back to the fact that I think the disagreement was on the big clause of having to do with who can offer yield on stable coins.
Exactly.
And, to me, it seems like just based off of public reporting and stuff that I've read from reporters that I trust a lot, it does seem like to me that was the big hiccup, or at least what I'm riding on. I think a lot of this stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff in the bill. I think a lot of people just accepted the fact that a lot of the stuff in the bill was going to be stuff that is probably going to have to be worked through with time, and the implications of it are yet to be seen. And it's one of those things where until you actually get going with the legislation, it's like, how impactful is any one thing? How much can you do workarounds around it? I think the negotiation at the end of the day had to do with whether or not certain parties were insistent on being able to offer yield on stable coins, whether or not they were a banking institution. And I just think that's a very simple thing to solve in the grand scheme of things. I would like to say before we had this big drop in the market, before there was so much urgency to get it done, I think a lot of parties felt like there was time to kick the can down the road on this thing. And there was other ways that this could be addressed. If the market was ripping higher right now, I think you could continue to kick that can down the road and push for a perfect bill. I don't think you can do that. I think now it's the pressure is on to get a bill across the finish line to appease the markets.
Well, and if you look at the markets real quick, just so everybody knows, as we're recording, Bitcoin now sub 70K by a long shot. We had another big wick down in the 4-hour. This has now pushed it into 67K. Many people are asking, do we see the 60K mark? Do we see a 59 or in the 50s around this? And of course, with that, We've got XRP defending very hard right now at around 129 as we point into this. Now, the advantage that this crypto market clarity act will do, I think this opens the floodgates for Ripple. This, of course, is going to give a whole slew of clarity in terms of regulatory railworks that, of course, Ripple has been building for some time. So it does have an impact, I think, on the entire business. I think Ripple is going to be one of the big beneficiaries, though, if this does get through. What are your thoughts? Who do you think wins? Let's say the top three when you look at different crypto projects in general that win on a passing.
That's a great one. If I was to go top 3 projects, I think Ripple is an obvious one. I think another obvious one that I would put at the top, and actually a company that I'm increasingly becoming more interested in, is going to be Circle. I think their deployment and what they've already built out in the DeFi market in terms of USDC, I think that's going to be an interesting one. Circle's been slaughtered since their IPO, and I think they'll continue to be. If interest rates come down, I think it's going to put more pressure on them. But I think the USDC deployment they have, unless we go into a negative interest rate cycle, which I highly doubt is going to happen, I find their business very interesting. And they've done a lot to build out stablecoin integrations in a lot of different DeFi protocols. So I like what they're doing a lot. And if I was to throw another one on there, excluding Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin generally succeeds really well with the whole rest of the market. I think the players who have done the work to build infrastructure in the early days in a regulated fashion are the ones that really win out, because they've been the ones who haven't been able to enjoy the fruits of the market when things were more unregulated and the more regulated players want to step in. Maybe someone like in Anchorage Digital, they had the first U.S. banking charter in the United States. I'll tell you right now, and we've talked about this before on the show, I don't think the Charles Schwabs of the world are going to be spinning up their own institutional custody sector. They're going to rely on the custodians like the Ripples and the Anchorages to provide institutional custody. I think those players who did the hard work in the beginning were doing things that weren't fun in terms of getting OCC charters and building out. Like Ripple's getting the money transmitter licenses right now. I think those are the things that pay dividends when clarity comes in, because now the rest of the industry, right, is scrambling to get these things to compete in the regulated system, while a lot of these other projects did the hard work early on to build that legal foundation so that when people felt comfortable stepping in, they could. So I think it's those projects, right, that have done the hard work to obtain the licenses. They have the biggest benefit of when the customers and clients feel like they finally have the clarity they need to step in.
Well, and the point you're making around some of the big companies that is essentially will benefit from this, much less some of the blockchains out there, whether you look at HBAR, Stellar, any of those that could possibly win on this. Obviously, Ethereum will do this just because of its relationship to the ERC side, what we're going to see on stablecoins. This is interesting to me because this, to me, is still the point that is still kind of an unknown. And if you look at Trump's position, and I'll show you the tweet real quick, because I think this is important to make note. There's a lot of pushback right now, primarily on the Trump administration, who basically wants to pass this, but they don't want any ethics provisions in here. And that's specifically targeted at President Trump's and or his family's crypto business. So right now, the Dems want to ban top officials from trading crypto, but it's okay for them to trade stocks, right? Yeah. No crypto, but stocks are okay. Let's do that. And then they call it a political hit job. Senate needs 60 votes. I would agree. And then, of course, you have the midterms. They're going to use this against him, I think, for sure. So problems, baby. Problems.
I want, this is an unpopular opinion. I don't want to take away people's rights to trade stocks and crypto if they're in the Senate. I want them to have to disclose it prior and make it publicly available before a trade goes in. Like, don't get me wrong, they shouldn't be able to do these things behind the scenes and then you find out 8 months later that they knew a policy change was coming, so they made a shift in their portfolio. But I don't want to discourage smart people who understand markets from going into government. I mean, what do we get? A whole bunch of people? I think about it sometimes. Like, what would it take to get me to be a government official? I mean, certainly being banned from being in markets and being able to contribute, in my opinion, to the investment behind the United States economy. Those are things that would be no-goes. I want people who understand this stuff in office. So a little bit of a catch-22. Trust me, I don't want these people to be able to front run markets and do things behind the scenes and have special information. But I also don't think you want to get the smartest people who are in that portion of investment in the United States to never want to touch a government position. So it should not be different for crypto, and it should not be different for stocks. And I don't necessarily agree with an outright ban, but there has to be solutions in place here that get us to a better place than we are now.
Well, it does it does something that I think a lot of people may not realize is happening in DC right now. If you remove the issue of the best entrepreneurs and, business people in the world to come in and become and do public service, and you remove their ability to just run their business, especially their family businesses, for a period of 3, 4, 5, 10 years, that's detrimental to obviously their own well-being. But I think the point is that when you do clamp them down, all it does is it incentivizes them to do deals that when they're out get resoluted on the backside. So it's like there's a lot of those inner workings as opposed to just letting them run and do normal everyday activities. So I'm in agreement. I think full disclosure is the key. Full disclosure.
No, you can't stop it too. I talked about this all the time. And actually I used to talk about this a lot, funny enough, when I was working in engineering. There's always a inert human reaction to make sure that when a change happens or something new needs to be presented, you put up 10 more rules and then 10 more rules and then 10 more rules. And then your rules are for other rules. And then there's rules to monitor other rules. And you get to this point where everything starts defeating the purpose and you kill market efficiency. Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, what's the simplest view of this? And what are some very light touch rules that you can put in place to prevent this? You can't stop the fact that there's going to be people in government who are going to know something, right? Everyone always has a little bit different access to information when it comes to some things. You can't stop that, and you don't want smart people not to be going into government. What you do is you have to make sure that they're just disclosing things prior to actions taking place. If everyone knows that XYZ is doing this, look, as long as you know they have a little explanation, maybe you follow what they're doing, maybe you don't, but it can't be a billion different rules all limiting all these different things until no one wants to work in government and we just get a bunch of people who don't understand markets. We can't have people making rules for markets who don't understand markets. That's the worst case shenanario.
Did you see all of the thing? Well, this kind of leads me to the question. Did you see everything that was happening at the Ondo Summit?
I wasn't watching it overly closely.
So just for a quick rundown for everybody, Ondo held their summit this week. It was essentially, Mickle, a rundown of Wall Street and DeFi coming into one place. And obviously Ondo very active in tokenized securities. I think that was a coming out point where Wall Street is going to start to put more pressure on their senators to get clarity through for the very purpose that this is a major opportunity for institutional capital to move forward. How big do you think that is?
It's huge. And ultimately, I think it's if you look at the Ondo Summit and who went, you see everyone who knows the inevitability of where this market is headed. I think everyone knows that this market is moving on chain, is moving to a tokenized world. And at the end of the day, what's so funny about it is it's the people who are providing the current infrastructure, right, are going to the Ondo Summit, are saying that this change absolutely needs to happen because it's such a huge upgrade in infrastructure. It's like the people you would expect to be anti this change and pushing back and trying to push it, I have almost given up. They understand that this infrastructure is such a big improvement that it needs to happen. And it's just one of those things, for the longest time, I always questioned, and I always said this was one of the biggest problems in terms of a negative thesis on crypto is it actually enough? Is it a big enough change for these traditional legacy players to say, we need to swap out our systems? There's not going to be something better. This is it. And I think we have that proof. They've capitulated and it's going to happen.
These were some of the takeaways. T+1 died on stage. I love that.
Exactly.
T+1 died on stage.
Exactly.
Real war, closed bank rails versus open programmable. Pick a side. You got RWA tokenization. It's a political moat that makes finance inevitable, which is another major thing. BlackRock, this was from them. The future isn't faster markets, it's self-executing markets, which I thought was dead on. Then you look at what we're going to look at around portfolios becoming personal and driven more around basically machine run, which I think is another trend that will eventually go out in this. But infrastructure eats ideology, and Ando wants to be on the rails. So there you have it. This was like a who's who. If you guys haven't watched it, we did a little bit of a rundown on this yesterday on the main channel. But the thing that was interesting to me were some of the speakers that started talking about this idea around, what do they call them? Universal exchanges. So the concept is really simple. Tokenized securities, tokenized metals, obviously perps, and then, of course, crypto trading all in one place. Do you think everybody's going to be in that kind of platform in the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I think kind of the coolest thing is, at the end of the day, what the cryptocurrency market is opening up is really for these different products to be decentralized and distributed across the internet. So I don't even think it's necessarily, I can think there's going to be a whole bunch of different interfaces and a whole bunch of different ways for people to get access to this stuff. But the very cool thing is I think it's going to build a very deep piece of liquidity in these structured products in DeFi markets, and people are going to be able to underwrite against different products here. And there's going to be different ways that you can lend against them and borrow against swaps. There's going to be a very, very deep market by taking these structured products out of the walled gardens of the financial institutions and building that infrastructure into an open, decentralized blockchain. Capital markets are going to completely transform. And I think the vast majority of it is going to end up happening on chain. There's still going to be segments, I think, as we transition that are going to be happening in the legacy way. But I think you're going to see more and more products seek the distributed blockchain kind of ecosystem, because I think that's where capital markets are more efficient. I think the number one thing people are learning is there's more yield in crypto because markets are more efficient. There's less middlemen. There's less people to take things out, and money is going to seek efficiency. That money is going to end up in the decentralized world, in the blockchain world, because that's where capital is most efficient. And that's where money is going to find itself as soon as people feel like they have the rules and regulations in place where it's worth it and it's not too risky for it to seek that market efficiency. But I think the efficiency is too great in crypto. The money is going to seek that efficiency, and there's really nothing that can be done about it over the long run. That's how markets work.
Mickle, when you look at where clarity is right now, I mean, because we're pretty much in a regulatory purgatory, so to speak. Do you think, because a lot of people now, Main Street, Wall Street, got a chance to see crypto really up close and personal at that event. Do you think there are Wall Street bankers now making the phone calls to their lobbies and to their senators saying, we got to get this through no matter what, because there's too much on the other side?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I just think it's too big. It's too big of a part of what the Trump administration has been pushing forward. And I think generally the mindset too inside of the Senate, inside of Congress, is that too much time has been spent on this thing to not have it ultimately passed. And I also think if you look at the banking lobby, I don't think the banking lobby is necessarily pushing against this. I think they want to make sure that whatever bill gets passed is in their best interest, right, and favors them. But I think they want clarity too. I think everyone wants clarity in the market. I think every party is going to push to make sure that clarity is in favor to them. But I think we're past the point in which people don't want clarity. I think the banking consortium has given up on this idea that crypto is just going to go away and they could ignore it and push it to the side. And, it's just not going to be impactful. I think at this point, their goal is to harness it. Like, they want clarity in a way that favors them and that pushes the innovation into their walled garden. We'll see where that ends up. I think that's a big part of the fight and part of the reason this is being pushed out. But something's going to break. Something's going to snap. And I think the most important thing that people need to realize is, at the end of the day, the technology is going to do what the technology is going to do. Me personally, I don't think the way the internet bill was crafted in terms of the specific clauses necessarily shaped the way that Amazon was built out today. I think generally the bill was favorable. I think the bill laid the groundwork. Was there things in there that people probably didn't like at the time? Absolutely. Was there things that were very good? Absolutely. But the general premise of the bill was to allow the internet to evolve into sort of this regulated tool that businesses could use. The companies themselves and the internet itself were so disruptive, so transformational that it led to that next phase. The investment dollars came in. It was so powerful, so game changing. Didn't matter what specific clause was in the bill. And I think we're going to get to the same place in crypto. I just think the technology is far more powerful than the system we have today. Capital will flow over because it's more efficient. They just need to get a bill across the line that allows that development and allows that innovation, allows those next steps to be taken place.
Listen, I think it's going to go through. I agree with Polymarket. I think it's starting to raise because you're right. There's too much work underneath the bridge here. We're dealing with too many interested capital markets to let this slip by, and you've got an administration that's dealing with it. The only thing I'm a little concerned with is the Democrats are going to want, what pound of flesh to exercise in lieu of trying to put some pressure on Trump, because they really would love to get a slice of his meat.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I am hopeful too, because like I know there's like a lot of back and forth here too, and I don't like how politicized it's become. But there are a lot of Democrats who, when this like clarity was first coming, who were on the side of clarity. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of politics happening, and you see this every single time the government is about to shut down. No one, it's never going to open back up. They're never going to open up the government. And then suddenly everyone gets together. It's like, oh, the government's back open. So they're going to all act like it's not going to pass, because that's how you create leverage, right? If if both sides were saying, oh, well, we think it's going to pass regardless, there'd be no leverage. So they're in part of the negotiation tactic here is for everyone who's fighting for this thing to make it seem like, oh, this isn't going to happen. It's going to get pushed over past midterms, and everyone starts panicking. It's like, where do I have to concede here? Where do I have to concede there? But that's what both parties are doing. And eventually both sides, in my opinion, are under the same incentive to have this thing pass. They're going to have to get together. They're going to have to both make sacrifices and concessions. And I think ultimately when that finally happens, we're on the winning side of it. Because like I said, I don't think it really matters who wins out on the negotiations. Is it Coinbase on what they want, or is it JP Morgan on what they want? I think ultimately both of them are reaching their hand into the technologies that we've been invested in.
Where do you think the defense zone is for XRP? If you look at the chart right now, I mean, come on, man. We are at 130, hovering after a big day today, coming down. What is that? What are we down here on the side? We are down, down 14. So this has been one of the bigger hits. Bitcoin, of course, down 7. We've got ETH down 7.5. Solana down 7. I mean, everything's just bleeding like crazy. But of course, XRP taking a big hit right here off the 150 mark, down to 130. Do you think, where does this stop? Where does the bleeding stop?
I was looking at a couple charts that show that we're at the most oversold territory, really, in XRP's history. If you throw an RSI on there, and I have a chart on my channel of just breaking down the 6 most oversold times in XRP's history. We're there. We're getting very close to being there on Bitcoin as well. It's hard to see. I mean, obviously there can always be one more spike down. We could end up being the most oversold point in XRP's history. I just think that's so surprising. I would not have expected this environment to be the most oversold point in XRP's history. Like when you look at what we went into the C19 stuff, when you take a look at what went on during the SEC versus Ripple case, like it's insane to me that we would be in the most oversold period right now. My thing is like, it's hard for me to imagine that this is just all happening because of nothing. Like I have to think that someone's off sides here. There's a big player that is causing this that we don't know about. it's hard to rationalize it any other way when you compare the magnitude of the sell-off we're witnessing in comparison to other historical events. It's hard to imagine there's no event here, that this is just
market conditions. Yeah. So you think there's an underlying force here that hasn't been revealed? Probably could have been another ripple effect from the 1010 event that's still being, somewhat compromised here.
Did you see Kathy Wood talk on that? She said she believes there's still unwind going on there. And that makes sense. That's the most logical thing I've heard in terms of why we're seeing what we're seeing right now. I think generally, if you look across the table, there's no doubt that risk is coming off in terms of multiple different aspects. If you take a look at a lot of the AI plays, data centers, risk is coming off, but it's not proportional to what we're seeing anywhere else. There is something happening in the cryptocurrency world that is causing a lot of pressure on the market. And whatever it is, isn't being mass reported. I think 1010 is the best conclusion you can come to in terms of what broke. Almost impossible for me not to think that someone is going to end up going belly up on the other side of this.
Has to be the case. I think you're exactly right. If you look at the S&P right there, even though it has been down, what are we down in the last week from its high? Here we are down 2.5%, but still well over what we have been. If you look back all the way into August of last year, considerably up on the S&P 500. Gold, of course, went up and then retraced again this morning. Silver kind of in the same boat, but in a much deeper pullback as it continues to fall. What do we have on silver right near off the top to where it is right now, trading at 34% down just in the last week? So if you're in silver and bought that top, ooh, what a pain.
And the crazy thing is too, is like, and that makes you even question too, even on what Kathy Wood was saying, is like, is something broken in traditional markets as well? Like, to see what silver is doing, to see what a lot of the risk complex is doing, it's like something is out of the ordinary right here, and it is affecting crypto severely. But it's so interesting because in other market events we've went into, like the FTX debacle, the Terra Luna, all those things I think were known a little bit earlier. Exactly. Like a lot of those things were seen. And a lot of people, I think, were able to say, okay, like this is going to get ugly. I don't think we've seen it yet. Is it a 1010 thing? Is it a micro? I think we're starting to see the emergence of like what these bubbles might have been in terms of what they are. But it's impossible for me to think at this point that there's not something. I think the good news is like I talked about earlier, I think, but like, I don't think this is going to end up being orders of magnitude over the most oversold period we've ever seen in cryptocurrency history. I think we're right up against some of the biggest events in history in terms of how oversold we are. And that means most likely the worst is behind us in terms of that. I think it's really just getting to the other side of it and waiting for that last catalyst, that last shoe to fall, that big moment where everyone's like, we're on the other side of this.
MicroStrategy right there on screen, guys. We are entering a phase which was really right around $100, 111 right now, that starts to go into free fall zone all the way down to 70 and as far as 50. So if MicroStrategy cuts another 50%, the MNAV would get very interesting here with strategy. What's your opinion on this?
I've been watching the MNAV, and actually so funny. I actually looked on their website and they're still showing an MNAV of 1.8. And that looks to be accurate. I was actually questioning real quick if they just haven't been updating the MNAV. So I'm trying to get some like double confirmation here on where the MNAV actually is in comparison to an independent calculation. I am still seeing that the MNAV is still above 1, which in all fairness, like, and I always say this because I've been wrong on strategy and Sailor being a house of cards and a problem for a while. It's impressive that they're holding a 1 MNAV right now. Let me tell you, it's shockingly impressive. Like, if you told me that Bitcoin would be here, would I think MicroStrategy would be holding a 1 MNAV? Yeah, absolutely not. So, honestly, I've been shockingly surprised on how that MNAV is held up in terms of being above 1. We'll see where it stays. Is this the thing to go? I would have expected it to be lower by now. So they're holding 1 MNAV. Bitcoin is the most oversold it's been. Maybe one of 7 event in terms of the sell-off we're in right now. Let's see what happens on the other side of it, but that's holding up decently strong. I would have predicted we'd be at like a 0.8 MNAV by now.
You've got the last time they hit sub 1 on their MNAV was in mid 22, right in the beef of the bear market. They went sub down to, I think, 0.7, 0.8. And that was right before it did span, though, over about a 6 to 7 month period. And it was right before Bitcoin started running on it. And of course, we saw it basically hit that all-time high. But right there, it was 2022. It was right there in that bear market zone that I was showing earlier of where they hit that. Hey, let's get in.
Do you believe people are still paying a premium for MicroStrategy?
I don't no.
Like that's the thing. It's almost like comical at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, who's paying a premium for MicroStrategy?
No, not happening.
No, it's and when you say it like that, it even sounds even more ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
It sounds even more ridiculous. But the truth is it's there. It's still there. Is that gonna unravel? You know,
it's all the instruments that he built around this thing. He's got these like dividend-like performances that are locking, in, and that's it. He basically bought himself some runway.
I agree. I mean, you know what? Maybe it's just too much of a skeptic look. But when I saw those instruments, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, this is like all the MicroStrategy bulls were like, it's financial engineering at its finest. I was like, ever since I've been in finance, you run away from the word financial engineering. I was like, when are we celebrating financial engineering? I don't know, man. The entire time I've been watching it, I've been skeptical, and it's had a lot more resiliency than I would ever imagine. Even where it is right now, shockingly resilient, and we'll see where it ends up. I wouldn't have ever expected this is where we would be, and it would have this much strength going into this. And we're kind of getting to the point where, unless this market disappears, you would expect the bottom to be in here extremely soon. So MicroStrategy, maybe they live on.
Do you think Coinbase is a buy right now? We're sitting at 150.
Coinbase. So here's my thing, and going into more general market theory. We're in free fall right now. I don't like catching this falling knife. Like I talked about earlier, one of the companies that I'm extremely interested in is going to be Circle. But look, these things perfectly, and you take a look at Coinbase's price chart here. There's normally pretty obvious buy volume that comes in when you're at the low. Me personally, I like to wait to see some of that buy volume come in rather than, being on the other side of it. So for me, I'll wait until there's some green candles coming in here to show kind of relief. But we're getting close. Like, we're getting very, very close on a lot of these companies. And like I talked about, Circle going from close to $250 down to they're trading at 52 this morning. I mean, we're talking about high quality cryptocurrency companies getting eviscerated right now in the market. If you're a buyer, if there's cash on hand, there is going to be on the other side of this so much opportunity. It's going to be absolutely incredible. It's all about
you have to hold through it.
Understanding, like we talked about in the beginning of the show, who are the long-term winners of clarity.
No doubt. I'll just show that Circle chart real quick, because that's to me, that's a huge one that you're hitting on right there. This is down almost to its offer price. Look at that. Yeah, it's sub.
I think
52.
So Circle went public at I think $38. It opened at $60. So it opened on the market at $60. So it was already up big. And now it's just been, I mean, I guarantee you Circle is going to look like the Robinhood chart. You're going to get Circle to potentially even out at, I don't know, $20-$30. It will trade at $20 to $30 for all of 2026, all of 2027. And then 2028, 2029, you're probably going to see Circle making a huge run, as everyone understands that Circle's not disappearing forever, that this is going to be a company that's going to be heavily ingrained into the digital dollar realm of crypto. And the problem is like, and like, this is what I've been talking about. When you have a crash from $250 to $52, that's not going to be a V bottom, unfortunately. I mean, this thing is going to be in a multi-year correction. And if understanding Circle's positioning long-term, in my opinion, it's going to be a huge stretch of opportunity to DCA into what's going to be a long-term winning company in the cryptocurrency sector.
I'm watching it close.
I'm not going to be dollar cost averaging on the way down. I think there's going to be a long period where there's going to be time to accumulate there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to go into the second half of show. I have something for you guys that I want to ask Mickle's opinion on. So this is a trigger warning because we're going to talk a little bit about the Epstein files, what was revealed around crypto over this last week. So we'll put up a big disclaimer right here. Second half of the show. Let's talk about it. A lot got revealed on these Epstein emails, primarily in crypto. And one of the biggest issues that we saw was his involvement around developers in the Bitcoin community. And of course, that started to also move even into early stage Coinbase investment. Granted, this was, over a decade ago. But the point being is you've got all of that. And then the damning emails at the end of all of the conspiracy theories that are out there today that XRP has been held down shows up in the Epstein files that he basically was going against XRP. What was your thought on that finding?
It's one of those things where I just think it shows how important this asset class and how many eyes were on this thing in the very early days.
Early stage.
I mean, for the longest time, it's been written off as, oh, it's a niche thing. Like there's some degens in there that play around. I mean, talk about proving that since its inception, the highest levels of finance had their eyes on this thing. I mean, Ripple was meeting with the Federal Reserve in 2013. There's these super highly informant groups talking about suppressing XRP already. I mean, this thing transcended and elevated to the highest and most, I gotta be careful with the word, but the most not important circles, but the highest level of like the people who run the world behind the scenes. Since crypto's inception, this was there. And I just think it shows the overall importance and how high this goes. I mean, I think this shows that this is probably something that every single person in the highest level of finance has had their eyes on for an extremely long time. And it's all been a game of don't let the public understand what's really here.
Yeah. Well, and just for clarification to kind of fact check everything, he basically donated to the lab that paid some of the Bitcoin core developers. So it's likely that those developers may not have known, but the lab knew. I'm assuming there's a little bit of support and conversation there. There's no evidence right now that he controlled anything around the development. So it was kind of like a degrees of separation, but it was a sticky degrees of separation that I think kind of put a little pressure on it. And then you have the anti-Ripple email. This is where he basically went directly at it, because the theory behind this was that they were trying to FUD on XRP because of the investment in the framework of where Bitcoin and that development was going. Do you think this validates everything that the XRP community has been saying for a long time?
I mean, look at who was banking this individual for the time, and what has been one of the biggest things that was alleged in terms of a specific bank in terms of their negative interactions with Ripple and XRP. I know Brad had a comment of 30 or 13 executives from this bank in his office at one point around the time that the case was filed. I think if you look at a lot of the potential emails between Gary Gensler and Jay Clayton in terms of there was a FOIA request in which how many times prior to the Ripple SEC case where XRP and JP Morgan mentioned in the same email. It's either a lot of coincidences all stacking up.
There are no coincidences.
Or it's the more and more details we get linking all these things together that we have to start to accept the fact that they're not coincidences and these are real thing that happened. And, it's one of those things where at the start of like all of this starting to be revealed, you're kind of like, this is bad, but what else is it going to find? And it's like, here's 10 more links. And then here's 10 more links. And then like, oh, here's email showing that this was happening. And then, oh, here's all these same parties communicating in 2013 that it's like, you get to the point where at this point, I think you have to accept two things. One, there was a clear and cohesive effort across some of these very powerful parties to suppress the things that were happening in the cryptocurrency market. And I think you can take that as two ways. I think the pessimistic view is that like, oh my God, that happened. I think the optimistic view is like, why do you think they were so worried about this? I can promise you if I launch my own cryptocurrency tomorrow, I don't think I'd have these parties
worried about
coming against me to try to slow me down so quickly. So I think they know there's something very powerful there.
Well, and it's the point that to me validates these inner circles. And I still, to this day, I believe, and you know, fortunately, we have some very good inside sources in DC that are telling us some things that even I am surprised at around why and how these certain parties are moving. And of course, part of this has been much like what we're seeing right here, which is really been a constructed effort to basically thwart the efforts of the really good projects like what Ripple has done. So I don't know. So could we say that now, could Epstein literally have been the genesis of the SEC lawsuit?
You know, it's a really good question, and it possibly yes. I mean, I think in terms of where the actual genesis was behind the scenes,
yeah,
I think this is some of the earliest indication of purposeful Ripple FUD in the market we've ever witnessed. So if you're tracking it back and you're saying, hey, where's a good source of origin?
Right.
I'll say this. There was a while where there was a Bitcoin forum where anonymous people were rewarding Bitcoiners to come out and FUD XRP. So they were actually collecting bounties and paying people to FUD XRP. Where was that money coming from?
Yeah.
Who was paying these people? What was the origin of those payments? There's projects in the market I don't like. I'm not willing to go out and pay people to go FUD those things.
Yeah.
There is clearly big parties involved in this from a very early days who understood the importance of the technology and wanted to make sure that they controlled as much of this as possible. I think at this point, I think the best news is like, I think it's been a complete failure. I think it's too late. I think things have gotten too big. They're too out of control. They lost on that effort.
Yeah, that's over in itself. But the connection to MIT, that alone is too close to where Gensler was at the time. And then you have, of course, him taking the role over at the SEC. It smells bad.
Plus, you had that weird transition between Clayton and Gensler as well, where Gary Gensler was going there and like meeting with Jay Clayton and like talking about these specific things beforehand. Like it's so bizarre. And like, I think from the outside in, you think the circle up top is so much bigger than it is. And
exactly.
I think from the inside out, and the more you can kind of poke in there, you see that the circle's a lot smaller than it actually is. And I think the base assumption is like, oh, well, something's happening over here and something's happening over here, but they probably don't see it. But I think it's what we're learning through these emails is they were all talking. They all knew what was happening. This wasn't some big kind of crazy coincidence that everyone tried to make it out to be. It was like, no, this extremely powerful technology emerged. There was clearly disruption that was going to take place, which is what we were talking about earlier in terms of now these institutions leading into it. But I think there was a real effort for a very long time to say, we don't have to let this disruption happen. We can stop it. And I think now we're seeing the receipts of the attempt to stop this disruption. I just think that whole thing has essentially been given up on. I think everyone understands right now.
I would agree.
You couldn't stop the internet, or the internet would have been built in China. You can't stop the cryptocurrency market, or the cryptocurrency market will be built in China. You have to embrace it. And I think that's where we are.
Well, and I think the other thing that is layering into this, and this comes from some of the reports we got out of Davos, is that we're seeing this transition because you're right. Listen, there's 400 people in the world that are essentially trying to orchestrate all this. And it's a matter of controlling the right access to the right politicians, to the right developers, to the right tech people, especially in this space. But Davos, I think, revealed that they're trying to connect to that community. We may be seeing a shift right now, Mickle, in that 400. We may be witnessing a shift in the 400 that is either starting to transition to more technocrats, which are obviously going to be moving into the finance space because of what blockchain is going to bring. So,
there's going to be new powers that control everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a very big effort in the emergence of the internet itself to control the development of the internet and who is going to be the winners. And let me tell you right now, the most powerful players in the world in 2008 are not the most powerful players in the world right now.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
internet changed that. The most powerful people in finance today are not going to be the
Not
most
gonna be
powerful
there.
people in finance in 10, 15 years from now. And I think that shift has already become very obvious. I think the IPO market is
doubt.
what really alerted some of those big players that, like, hey, you've been around for 150 years, but Coinbase just IPO'd and they were 3x the size of you, 4x the size of you.
Mm.
Those things are going to change, and you're already seeing it, really where you're already seeing it in the lobbying dollars. Take a look at who was one of the biggest lobbying and one of the biggest PACs. It was the cryptocurrency industry.
Yep.
They can't stop that ship. It's only going to become more and more one-sided, and it's going to keep pushing favorable policy.
I worry though that if the Republicans lose the House and Senate, and you can imagine the first thing they're going to be going after, which you think about it. I mean, fair shake, all the major donors, all those kind of, I mean, we're going to see what could see some real debacle coming out of DC in the next, after November of this year. So
I just think it's all a show. I mean, like, if the
It is
cryptocurrency
theater.
companies line the Democrats' pockets, they'll be pro-crypto. I mean, the same way that there has to be more money coming in from the cryptocurrency sector than the banking lobby. You get more money coming in, then everyone's like, oh, well, we think this is good for inclusion.
oh boy, here we go.
Exactly. It's like, it's always this thing of like, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day when I talk about inevitability. The cryptocurrency technology is too powerful. It's too efficient. It will change the minds of politicians. All of these things will happen because the technology at the end of the day is better. Every position will shift towards the embracement of the technology because there's nothing really to push against.
Right.
The same
right.
is true for AI. The same is true for the internet. The technology itself is too powerful. You can make all these rules and people can fight about it, but the technologies are going to get bigger. They're going to buy out the politicians at the end of the day and put things in place that are pro-innovation.
Man, we got a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks. Mickle, we're going to have you back. You're on here, I think, weekly now. So great to have you. And thanks for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, always great to come on. And hopefully market's looking better the next time I'm on.
Yeah. You guys know what to do. Make sure and like and subscribe. Share this out to someone else who is trying to learn about all of what's happening in the space today. Thanks again for stopping in on the XRP Pod. Take care.